Well, here I am again, all alone with nobody to debate. I sent emails to a dozen well-known Christian nationalists, challenging them to a debate on the topic, "Is America a Christian nation?" All I got was dead silence. I even taunted them by asking why not one of them was willing to stand up and defend their God. Again, just deafening silence. So after months of waiting in vain, I'm left with no alternative. I've decided to debate against their claims. I will begin by defining the scope of the debate. By Christian nation, we aren't talking about the demographic makeup of America. We all agree that most Americans are Christian, just like we all agree that most Americans are white and most Americans are women. But we are no more a Christian nation than we are a white nation or a woman nation. This debate is specifically about the government of America. Christian nationalists assert that the Founding Fathers intended to create a nation founded upon Christian principles. The reason why they do so is because they know that Americans, including tens of millions of Christians, would never agree to swap our democracy for a Christian theocracy. So nationalists must convince Americans that the Founding Fathers intended to create a Christian nation. Let's begin. In their writings, what did Founding Fathers John Adams and Thomas Paine credit as the models upon which the American Constitution was built? They credited the constitutions of ancient Athens and Rome. Neither of those constitutions, nor ours, claim to come from divine authority. That is the exact opposite of the Old Testament and from Jesus, both of which claimed divine authority. Ours declares, "We the people establish this Constitution for the United States of America." John Adams wrote the book, History of the Principal Republics in the World, a defense of the constitutions of government of the United States of America. Volume 1, Influence of Greece and Rome. Volume 2, Secular Renaissance, Italian Republics. And Volume 3, Precedent of British Commonwealth. If there were a Volume 4, the Bible, then someone must have stolen it. As president, Adams signed the Treaty of Tripoli in 1797, which stated, "The government of the United States of America is not in any sense founded on the Christian religion." This treaty was ratified by Congress unanimously. It was only the third time in over 300 votes that Congress voted unanimously. Now let's investigate the true origins of America. Christian nationalists try to convince Americans that the source of our principles comes from their God. They have stolen the credit from the man to whom it rightfully belongs, a man few Americans have ever heard of, the true father of the United States of America, Solon of Athens. It is his statue that should be displayed in our public squares. It is his writings that should be posted in our government buildings. And his statutes and writings would be if Christians hadn't stolen all the credit due Solon and falsely given it to their god instead. Solon achieved influence in 594 BCE, over 600 years before Christ, and is the man most responsible for many American principles, including the First Amendment. Christian nationalists often claim that the Ten Commandments are the basis of our Constitution. I only got as far as the First Commandment before I ran into a huge problem. Freedom of religion is prohibited by God's first and foremost commandment: Thou shalt have no other gods before me. God even assigned the death penalty to those who violated this commandment. But our First Amendment guarantees Americans the right to defy God's first commandment. Based on the Constitution written by our founding fathers, it seems that instead of basing our laws on God's holy book, they chose to kick him right in his invisible nuts. The Second Amendment. Solon said that it was not only the right, but the duty of every citizen to bear arms in defense of the state. Jesus said, "Turn the other cheek." How well do you think that would have worked out for us, say in 1941? Fortunately, Americans chose to follow the advice of Solon and ignore Jesus. The Sixth Amendment. Solon introduced the concept of a trial by a jury of your peers, chosen at random with the right of appeal. In the Bible, you had the right to a trial by a group of people holding rocks, which made appeals rather unlikely. Article 1. Solon was the first man in history to eliminate birthright as a basis for government office. Instead, he proposed election of senators and the creation of democratic assemblies such that no law could be passed without a majority vote. I couldn't find democracy anywhere in the Bible, just page after page of a celestial dictatorship. Solon made laws defending the principles of private property, government encouragement of economic trades and crafts, and a strong middle class. I couldn't find any of that in the Bible. In fact, Jesus said to give up all of your personal possessions. Solon also originated the concept of allowing foreigners who have mastered a useful trade to immigrate and become citizens. Who are the biggest foes of immigration in America? You guessed it, Christians. The 13th Amendment. Actually, I did find one biblical principle that our founding fathers accepted: slavery. On the floor of the U.S. Senate in 1850, the future president of the Confederacy, Jefferson Davis, gave a speech in which he justified slavery by referring to the Bible. He said it was sanctioned in both testaments, and he wasn't lying. This one biblical principle ruined the lives of millions of Africans who were ripped from their families. And if they survived the long voyage, they spent the rest of their lives as the personal property of white Christian men. To repair this mistake, Congress passed the 13th Amendment, and it cost the lives of hundreds of thousands of American heroes. And by heroes, I'm referring to Union soldiers not to the ones who were willing to die to keep humans in slavery. Solon invented the separation of the executive, legislative, and judicial branches of government. Boy, that sure sounds familiar. Oh yeah, that describes our government. What did the Bible offer? Moses had them all united under a single aristocratic council. It looks like the founding fathers chose Solon over the Bible once again. Solon also introduced the concept of taking a government official to court for malfeasance. Couldn't find that in the Bible. Adams, Paine, and many other founding fathers credited Solon's Constitution for Athens as what most inspired the American Constitution, followed closely by the equally pagan Constitution of the Roman Republic. Now let's analyze the source of some other important legal concepts upon which our nation was founded, and see if there is any validity to the claims of Christian nationalists. The Stoics were Greek philosophers whose thinking dominated the Roman and Greek empires for 800 years, from 300 BCE until 529 ACE, at which time Stoicism was outlawed by Roman Emperor Justinian I. Why was it outlawed? Because it conflicted with Christianity. Let's see just what it was about Stoicism that conflicted so badly with Christianity that it had to be outlawed. Here are some concepts that figured prominently in the Stoics' views of morality, law, and government. 1. Liberty. 2. Human rights. 3. Equality under the law. 4. Freedom of speech. Those were the concepts that were at odds with Christianity. The Bible grants you the liberty to choose to be saved through belief in Jesus Christ, or be tortured forever. There are those who actually believe that's liberty. But our modern laws classify that as coercion, which is defined as actual or threatened force for the purpose of compelling action. Yep, that's coercion, all right. Human rights are only applicable to Christians, which makes sense since everyone else is going to hell anyway. Equality under the law. The 19th Amendment gave equality to women at the voting booth. The Bible set the value of a woman at between 1/2 and 2/3 that of a man, depending on age. I know that one had to hurt. And for you teenagers who are celebrating, you won't be teenagers that long. Freedom of speech conflicts with many Bible verses, including blasphemy, which was classified as an executable offense. So it now becomes obvious why Stoicism was outlawed by Justinian. What's really sad is that 1,500 years later, we are still struggling to regain what Justinian took from all of us. If rationalists hadn't been defeated by ghost worshippers, the Knights of the Round Table probably would have been playing video games. And King Arthur's most famous quote might have been, "One small step for a man, one giant leap for mankind." Now let's look at the Ten Commandments, which Christian nationalists claim are the basis of our Constitution. We've already dealt with God's first commandment. The second commandment prohibits making graven images of anything that is in heaven above. Oops! Looks like all those Jesus statues are going to have to be melted down. Taking the Lord's name in vain is not a crime. Everybody does it all the time. Besides, it's a good way to take your mind off the pain after you've mistaken your thumb for a nail. The 10 Commandments made working on the Sabbath a capital offense. But our laws allow millions of Americans to work on weekends. In fact, Americans who commit this heinous crime often get paid time and a half. Thou shalt not kill. Is that the law of our land? Apparently not. Capital punishment has been and still is legal in America. And its most fervent supporters are Christians. In the Bible, adultery is a capital offense. Our laws don't even classify it as a misdemeanor. The Bible even considers looking lustfully at someone to be adultery. Yet many of us watch scantily clad beauty contestants parade across the screens of our television sets, doing their very best to look sexy. If we enforce that law, who will be left alive to turn off the TVs? The only commandment we incorporated in our laws was the prohibition against stealing, a prohibition that was recognized as necessary long before humans invented Christianity. Bearing false witness is another law, included by almost every society. However, clergy and politicians are excluded from the prohibition against lying, which is actually a good thing, because if they were not allowed to lie, there wouldn't be any clergy or politicians, and then we wouldn't have anyone to steal our stuff. I've yet to see a law in any state prohibit envy. It is the foundation upon which our capitalism functions. Now that we've seen God's commandments, let's look at a list of crimes that God didn't feel were important enough to include. Rape, arson, torture, bribery, extortion, beating the snot out of someone. Thankfully, our lawmakers did see fit to include these lesser crimes. Let's look at the judicial branch of government. If we were founded as a Christian nation, why has the Supreme Court repeatedly interpreted the Constitution written by the Founding Fathers in such a way as to make school prayer illegal and teaching creationism illegal? That is even harder to explain when one considers that the vast majority of judges have been either Jewish or Christian. The Supreme Court has held the Establishment of Religion Clause of the First Amendment means at least this: neither a state nor the federal government can pass laws which aid one religion, aid all religions, or prefer one religion over another. That would be a strange interpretation indeed for a Christian nation. However, that is exactly what one would expect from a secular government. If we were founded as a Christian nation, why did the justices use the Lemon Test to determine the legality of religious activity? The Lemon Test consists of 3 prongs. 1. The government's action must have a secular legislative purpose. Why would a Christian nation require a secular purpose? 2. The government's action must not have the primary effect of either advancing or inhibiting religion. That doesn't sound very Christian to me. 3. The government's action must not result in an excessive government entanglement with religion. And there's your separation of church and state. If any one of these 3 prongs are violated, the government's action is deemed unconstitutional under the Establishment Clause of the First Amendment. Now the legislative branch. If America were founded as a Christian nation, as nationalists contend, then why did Christian legislators attempt to pass amendments for almost 100 years trying to declare America a Christian nation? Amendments are changes to the Constitution. The only reason to change our Constitution to make America a Christian nation would be if we weren't founded as a Christian nation. If we were, the amendments would have been unnecessary. Since nearly all congressmen were and are Christian, that means these attempts were defeated by Christians. Viewers should Google Christian Amendment. And finally, the executive branch. Question: which president said this? We establish no religion in this country. We command no worship. We mandate no faith, nor will we ever. Church and state are and must remain separate. Okay, time's up. That quote was from a 1984 speech by President Ronald Reagan. Didn't see that one coming, did you? The Constitution is my Bible. The Bill of Rights are my 10 Commandments. And I can prove America was founded on my Bible and my 10 Commandments.